New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Why, hello, it's me. Yes, me, Bonnie Gonzalez, your doula for grief. And I am a grief coach, a registered nurse, a religious science practitioner, and a licensed soul collage facilitator. But most importantly, I am a human being right here on the planet with you. So thank you for joining me whenever you're joining. If this is your first time, I just want to say welcome, and I want to assure you that you have come to the right place to begin your healing, to begin your healing on your journey of recovering from grief. And I just applaud your courageousness for tuning in and that desire to heal. And if you're a returning guest, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for continuing to trust me to help you with understanding grief. And here's what I want to say to that, to grief and loss. I want you to know that loss is what we experience and grief is what we feel. And loss is just categorized or defined as any event, expected or unexpected, that happens and changes your life, that you can't go back to the way it was before. And of course, death is the biggest loss we'll encounter in this thing called life, on this human experience. Knowing that that is the biggest, and we honor that. We honor that that is the biggest loss. But we also have other ameliorative losses that I refer to as living losses. That maybe you lost your job, maybe you lost your home. Maybe a good friend has just suddenly turned away. And there's divorce that, oh my goodness, yes, that is another big loss. A geographical move, surgery, aging, the list goes on, and we don't stop to even think about that. Those are losses. And then with those losses is grief. And those are the emotions that we experience related to the loss. And it could be, I always say anger is one of those that's easy to latch onto, but very justifiable in its own right. So there's anger, there's sadness, there's shock, there's numbness, there's that confusion. Knowing that whatever your experience is what you're experiencing. And please, I ask you not to be the person that says to anyone that's in grief, just get over it, or aren't you over it by now? I just offer you to say to them, that must be difficult. Or just to say, I am here for you. I think we forget how important just our presence is to someone that is in grief. But sometimes it's not even the words. I love what Maya Angelou says, that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So that's what's important with grief. Understanding your grief. If you're the supporter, then knowing what your role is and how vital that is. So I am here just to continue to move the needle on bringing grief out of the shadows of our lives and right into the middle of our lives. Because grief has a superpower, and its superpower is to heal us, change us, and transform us in the most positive ways. So that's what I want to say to grief and loss. And speaking of losses, I've heard from so many people this last couple of days about, the devastation that's going on the island of Hawaii, And just want to offer my deepest condolences and just sense of sorrow for such loss. And because we're all talking about this and we're all grieving this, this is what's called collective grief. That it encompasses all of us. We're all aware of what's going on. We're all aware of the suffering that's happening there right now. And I know that there's so many people sending prayers up. And just knowing that when we're in a collective grief, there's a positive aspect of that we get to talk about it. And we get to talk about it with each other. Be it in the grocery store, at the post office, at the water cooler at work, or just in a phone call. We get to talk about it. And that's what's vital with grief. That's what's vital, to be able to talk about it and express what you're feeling. For me, I say grief has three pillars. The first one is grief needs to be shared. Grief needs to be heard, and grief needs to be validated. And when we're going through this collective grief, we're doing all three: sharing and validating and being heard. So with that, I want to move to our theme today, and I'm so excited to have, just the best guest on the planet. Today, our theme is grieving the loss of our exes. And I put in parentheses, former partners. And I know so many people that have been navigating these waters. How do I grieve an ex? Or why would I grieve an ex? So all of those questions, or any questions that you have, please drop them in the comment box. Let us know that you're out there listening, even if it's just to say hello. So do that, please. And now I'm going to shift gears and get to our topic and bring on our beautiful guest. Today, I am so honored to have Dr. Bob Deen join us from Midtown in Atlanta, Georgia. So Dr. Deen joined the Center for Spiritual Living Midtown after serving as the professional education manager for Centers for Spiritual Living and president of Holmes Institute in Golden, Colorado. Dr. Bob received his ministerial training from Dr. Kennedy Schultz there in Atlanta. I'm not in Atlanta, but there in Atlanta. He served centers in Florida and California before spending 10 years as a senior minister for the Greater Philadelphia Center for Spiritual Living. Isn't Philadelphia the city of brotherly love? So anyway, Dr. Bob brings a rich background in ministry, having first been licensed as a Baptist minister at the age of 19. His interests cover a range of spiritual traditions and philosophical systems of thought. Sometimes Dr. Deen is referred to as the weaver of spiritual traditions. Dr. Bob understands the science of mind teaching of Dr. Ernest Holmes. Dr. Bob understands the science of mind teachings of Ernest Holmes, sees it as the lens through which all others can be understood. He brings a deep belief in principle as presented by the science of mind, along with wisdom, humor, and love to his ministry. So help me welcome just, a really beautiful guest. I had the opportunity of meeting him in person, and he'll be here with us to share our story with grieving the loss of our ex. And I hope he's still there. I know that we were, there you are. Yeah, I saw the little circle and I knew, something's circling. So welcome so much, Bob. And I just want to just say thank you for your yes to today, because I know that sharing your story will definitely help someone else. I can guarantee you.
Thank you.
Yes. So there's our Dr. Deen's contact information, and I'm going to call you Bob because I'm feeling comfortable.
Bob, yes, please.
Yes. So I talked about our theme of, grieving our former partners.
Right.
And I know that you have a story that you can share. And if you don't mind sharing a little bit of that story. And I know it's pretty new as well, that it's a new loss, so sometimes can be very tender. So that's why I say yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I thank you for the introduction. Wow. I had not heard that read quite with the energy and enthusiasm you read it. And I've never in my life been called beautiful. So thank you.
You are.
Bottom of my heart. And I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, this whole idea sort of emerged, as you know, Bonnie, from a conversation between the two of us a few weeks ago. And all of this sudden feeling and energy bubbled up. My story that I want to share regarding the exes is that I lost my former wife. I don't really like the ex label.
Okay, we'll say former.
I'll call her my former wife and my only wife. Even though we've been divorced for nearly 40 years, we started our lives, in many ways, our lives were out very early together. We had been high school sweethearts. We met at a football game when my school was beating her school, which we have still argued about up until the end. And we met. We had an argument the first time we met about who could play the trumpet the best. And that was kind of it. We just were hooked from there on in. Our families knew each other and were close, and so they were nurturing and supporting the relationship. We competed against each other in a high school speaking contest. I guess our various schools. She won. I lost, but we were the top two contestants. And I think I've been in this ministry all these years since then to prove her wrong. Although she did a better job. There was no question about it. I knew it at the time. But the story is that after having that start, in April of this year, she passed away.
Yes.
And very quickly and very, well, the process wasn't that quick, but the surprise ending of all of it was she was in the hospital since December for what was supposed to have been a simple correction surgery. They did the corrective surgery, and then her body just never restarted.
Wow.
And with all of the things they tried and whatever, and like you, she was a nurse. She was a nurse practitioner, primarily with neonatal diabetes and all kinds of, all in that area. So when they finally told her, after trying all kinds of things, that there was nothing else they could do, she really knew and understood what the end would be. She understood the process really well.
And just one question, Bob.
Sure.
What was your wife's name? What was your former wife's name?
Her name was Kay. She went by Kay. It was Linda Kay Jackson Deen Mann.
Yeah.
And made her transition on April 3rd of this year, and And I was looking that back up because as we were in conversation about this before we started, it was like a few weeks ago. Well, that's more than a few weeks, but I know that is part of what grief does. That there's this whole accordion thing with time where it can shrink down and go away. And she and I, trying to think which parts of the story are the most important for our purposes here. I think where my heart hurts is that she was only a few months younger than I am. And that alone was a shock. Like I said, we were together in high school. We graduated. We dated. We dated constantly the last 2 years of high school, and then separated during college. Then got back together. Got married. We were both very steeped in our spiritual tradition, and so we got married. It was a combination of our wedding and a commitment to ministry. So we stepped into that. Of the two of us, she was always the bravest one. I mean, we went in pretty tough places in ministry in those early years because we were working for sort of the social ministry side of things. And,
Right.
And we worked in we worked one summer in New York, in Harlem, not long after the Harlem riots.
Right.
And teaching kids that had never doing remedial math, basically remedial education. You know, she was fearless, and because she only saw these people and as potential. She had through her whole life. You know, she never stopped that. Later, we had a wonderful daughter, and who may be listening in. If you are, say hello. I'm really fumbling here. The rest of the story is that after we had been together, my daughter came along, and I decided that it was time for me to be more honest about myself. So I came out as a gay man because that was really what I was. I honestly didn't believe that when she and I got married, but yet it had already been an issue in our lives. But we decided, hey, God and a good relationship can heal anything. And while I do believe that's possible, it did not turn out to be true for us. So it was a very painful separation and a very sad one. It was angry, but not as angry as it was hurt, just raw pain. To her credit, she held the strong opinion that a father should never be kept away from their child.
That's beautiful.
She made sure that that my daughter and I got to be together and have connections and contact. Even when some of her family tried to stop that and tried to prevent her from doing that, they threatened at one point to take her away, my daughter away from both of us if we weren't going to keep her away from the evil gay man.
Oh my goodness.
Now they've come full circle on that. That was a long time ago. That was 40 years ago, practically. Times have changed. Their attitudes have changed. And so we were able, though, to maintain some connection. We worked through the angry stuff. We were committed to keeping that all going. And so then a few years later, she met her next husband, and the one, as I said, I got it started and tried to make it work and just wasn't equipped for it, but he came along and did the marriage thing really well because they were married for 39 years. And,
wow, that's a long time.
We have a wonderful relationship. He calls me his husband-in-law. I was part of the husband-in-law, not his, but
the husband-in-law. That is beautiful.
Which is really sweet. And I had the, so we really worked on this relationship. So over these 40 years, we always saw each other on holidays, birthdays. Every time the family got together, my daughter's home here in Atlanta became the kind of the central place for gathering everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I would come in from wherever I was doing ministry with whoever I was with at the time, and we would get together for Thanksgiving and parties and all of that.
Yes.
It was really easy and wonderful. And over the years, we were able to talk to each other about the pain of what happened when we separated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that had been going along pretty easily. And then when she got sick and it became clear that she probably only had a few days to live,
Mm-hmm.
I went to the hospital to see her. And we had a good cry together.
Great.
For both the fact that she was leaving and the fact that there was so much history with us and the pain that we had been through and the wonderful, joyous things too. It wasn't all pain.
Wow.
And then she whispered in my ear, "Please stay." So I came and went from the hospital, but I was there with her when she made her transition.
Wow.
As was my daughter, and as was her sister and her husband, of course. And I think one friend. So we were able to be right with her, and she passed to the other side with the same strength and power that she had as a person. Her faith was so strong, and her belief. And it was a really sweet ending. And I was surprised and shocked. This is I guess, getting to the point of today. I was so shocked by how intensely I felt the grief and the loss.
Yes.
I mean, granted, other than my younger sister, she knows me longer and more and better than anyone else on the planet.
And how long had you been divorced from Kay?
40 years. Right.
And you were with her
over 40 years. Yeah.
Right. And you were together. You were married for how long?
We were married 11 years.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I've been here a while.
Oh no, I'm not trying to do that, man. I can get my fingers going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of the I mean, we knew each other for a long time, and that
yes.
And there are stories and experiences, and I realized this as we were in those last days, that there's so much about our life together that my daughter was too young to remember. Only 7 when we parted, and before she was born, there are lots that went on that she would never have known about. So a lot of what I've been doing during this grieving period is telling stories about our time together, the wild and crazy things we did, the adventures we had. The story that my daughter wanted me to tell at the memorial, which I did, was the story of her when we were first in ministry. We were helping a church in Miami to, maybe shouldn't say where, but in Miami to connect the neighborhood. We were in a special project to do that. And I was in the office building, in the church building, trying to create these programs and things. And she was out on the street. So she made friends with a number of the folks in the street. And then one Sunday invited them to come to service on Sunday. And they did. She walked in with her little posse of ladies. Ladies of the evening, as we call them in those days.
Oh no! I mean, oh yes, wonderful.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly. But oh no is what the congregation said, because they wanted to that. I wasn't prepared. I was sitting there up front on the stage. I didn't know that. I just knew these were people that she had gathered into a Bible study and was really ministering to. And here they came in, and I could get a straight answer out of her whether she knew that what she was doing or not, and it didn't matter. Because it didn't matter. Yes, it was such a beautiful moment, and the church just had to deal with it. That was all there is to it. They could not ignore the people that if we were going to be connected with the community, this is our community. This is the neighborhood we're in. And they dealt with it by firing both of us and firing their minister, and then moving out of that community completely. So I'm sure we were just one small part of all that.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys went through a lot together, Bob, a lot together as two people, not just as a couple, but as two people navigating tough times together. Tough times.
Yeah, that the end of the 60s, early 70s was a tough time. And we were in difficult locations. We were in Harlem, we were in Miami, we were in other places. And figuring out what to do and figuring out how to be married.
Yeah, and yes, figuring out your journey. It's a part of your journey, figuring out what direction. That's what I call it. I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that Megan is here with us. And I thought Megan was saying hand pink waving. It's just telling me that it's a pink hand waving. And I was thinking, I don't know what that means. Maybe that's a sign. And then we have Wayne from Calgary. Wayne joins us when he can, and he's talking about white light in all the cosmos. So there's that white light, that guides all of us, Wayne. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Bob, I just want to get back to your feeling, because I too lost an ex who I had not seen for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I had not seen him. And unlike you and Kay working side by side and hand in hand, my ex and I wasn't beautiful at all. Well, it was beautiful because I had 4 kids from that marriage. Yes. But he was very, I'll just say this, he was one of those people that had gone to Vietnam, and I think had a lot of post-traumatic stress. And at that time, it wasn't identifiable. It had come from a home that was very difficult. So our relationship was somewhat difficult. And just like you were saying that you were being very painfully honest with Kay about your sexuality, that takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage. And what I was going to say, how I can relate to that, it took a lot of courage for me to say that I couldn't live with someone who was so abusive. It just needs courage.
It does.
And it sounds like you were separated, 40 years. And, we think that, we're separated, we've gone our ways, and if they die, oh, well. But my goodness, that is not the, it's like you're grieving 2 losses. Here's I'll keep it in the eye. But I again grieved. When he died, grieved the loss of the marriage, the divorce. Then it was a second grief that now he's completely gone. There's no way to make amends, to go back or do anything. It was, and maybe I'll add a third thing on. It was a chapter of my life that feels like was suddenly erased when he was gone. So I'll ask you to speak to that aspect, how those, I call it a double whammy, or sometimes a triple whammy.
Yeah, I think a triple whammy is more accurate. You're right. Yeah, it was. And because in those last days and in the days right after she was gone, I started having these memories of those, because that was a long time ago, and I don't spend much time thinking about those days anymore because I'm very engaged in my present life. But it brought up all the memories of our time together, those formative, of any unresolved stuff that we were carrying, that I was carrying, and the really sweet memories and really painful memories, but a lot of memory of things I hadn't even thought about, people I hadn't thought about in years that we were engaged with. And you're right. So it's like it was grieving the end of that relationship, because once that relationship ended, we did. I lost most of my friends who were part of our together world at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And she lost a lot of friends as well, but I don't, I'm not in her head. But for me, it was so. So these last weeks and months have been about grieving or going to a deeper level of grief of of that experience, and then add on to that the loss of the person I knew now, who was so loving and supportive of her grandchildren, of her life, of her church people. Folks said, they knew her for 3 minutes and she knew their life story and what they needed to be prayed for, and she had that knack. She just so I'm grieving the loss for myself. I'm also grieving and feeling very sad about my grandchildren, and that their grandmother is no longer there. Especially my granddaughter. Well, both of them. That she won't be there to come back to and to continue to connect with. She was a crafter, and my granddaughter has become quite the seamstress and crafter in response to all of that. And
yes.
And that's a deep sadness. And then you're right. And then the natural grieving that goes on I think for all of us who have been around the sun a lot of times and been on the planet of
right.
The life chapters that aren't there anymore. This just accentuated it.
Right.
And the way it's affected me because I get surprised by it. Most of the time I'm going through my day. We didn't have day-to-day contact, so I didn't have any reason to be aware of her most of the time. Except
exactly.
I get surprised. It's like, wham, there's there it is. There's the memory, there's the sadness, there's the grief. And I just have to turn away, walk away, get by myself a minute so that I can feel it, let it out.
Yes.
Because I do know enough to know if I bottle it up, it's going to come out somewhere. It's going to come out in my physicality. It's going to come out in my emotions in other places. And
you're
so
so
I
right.
really dived into taking care of myself for this time.
And I want to say to that, Bob, that is the hardest part I feel of being the ex that is now the griever, because I think there's a term called disenfranchisement of grief, because society doesn't hold a place for us to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that your ex died." I am just so fortunate that I've remarried, and my husband's Cuban. Do you know that when I told him that my ex had died, he was very just so supportive. But all of his Cuban friends that would call would say, "I'm so sorry to hear that your ex-husband died." It's a culture that really respects that aspect of the human experience.
Right.
That it does affect, that you are affected by that. So there's not a lot of places. I know a couple clients that I had felt like they wanted to join a widow's support group, but you're not the widow because you're not. And so, but here's what I say to those people, or say to those clients: join anyway.
Yes.
Join. Yes, I joined something called Soaring Spirits. I went with my sister because her husband had died, so I got a pass. I said, thank goodness my ex gave me a pass to get in, and could really, that's what has led me to become a doula for grief. Looking at what people do need and how they need it. And I want to get back to, again, what may have come up for you, because you did talk about this a little. The guilt. Was there guilt that you felt that you needed to work through, or had you already worked through that?
Yes, it resurfaced. the biggest issue for me in ending the relationship with her way back and separating and leaving, not leaving my daughter, but leaving her, but leaving my anyway, you know what all's involved with that. The big issue for me was the guilt over not being because I loved her and I still do, not being the person she needed me to be in order to stay with me. That was the biggie. That was the one that just, and it kept me in the relationship past the point where it was probably helpful to either of us way back then. But because the guilt was that I just couldn't accept that I couldn't be the person she needed because I cared so much for her. And when I finally began to accept that way back yonder is when we began to separate and finally did separate. But that came back up again. It was like in my face this time. Like I was feeling it fresh for the first time, as if that meant something in me is flawed, something in me is wrong. So it was guilt, but it was also shame, that deeper level where it's not shame. That's it. I did something wrong, but I am something wrong, and I got the unpleasantness of feeling that again. Fortunately, I didn't get stuck in it this time.
You felt it.
Yeah, it didn't take me years of therapy to finally move beyond it, but it definitely was a process and part of what I feel.
Yeah, and I want to ask you something deeply personal, and you don't have to answer it. But when you were saying that you felt guilty that you could not be the person that she needed you to be, when you shared, with her the truth of your own, sexual preference, was there some part of you that was hoping she would accept that would be accepting and say, I'm just wondering, because I'm just wondering. And I'll say why later.
Okay. Well, our story was different than many because I broke off the engagement because I knew I had to sort that out. And so we ended it before we got married. And for about 2.5 months, we both sought counseling. And then she reached out to me and said, if you will be faithful to me, then I really believe this can be healed. And I would like to be that person to be with you to do that. Now, those weren't her exact words, but that was the intent.
Wow. So there was an acceptance. Yes.
Oh, there was. Absolutely. And, we didn't tell anybody else. That was our secret, other than our particular therapists at the time were counselors. And both hers and mine advised against it. They knew that probably wasn't going to work. But each for our own reasons, we had to try. Yes. Get into that, and so once we began separating, it was, and I say it that way because it took a while. We began separating emotionally before we ever moved out, and there was a lot of grieving with that, just the feelings of it.
Yeah.
But once we I just completely lost my train. So there wasn't so much a matter of her or either one of us kind of saying, okay, this is brand new, we're being betrayed or shocked, because we both knew.
Yes.
We knew the stories, and that helped my guilt, frankly, that I had not gotten into this and then tricked her. And I honestly believed that I would change because I wanted to change. I was convinced of that. And that's another old program. But
yes. Okay. I'll sign you up for that program.
Sign me up for that one. We're talking about it another time. But but all of that resurfaced. I mean, it just came bubbling up again once she passed away and once she died.
And Bob, after she died, with all these emotions that came up, did you seek any help? How did you allow yourself to be healed during this time? Yeah, that's it. How did you allow Bob to be healed?
I have a really strong network of other practitioners, of ministers, of dear friends that I'm close to, and we are scattered all over the country. But thanks to Zoom, we can be in each other's faces anytime we want to, and sometimes we don't. That's where I got my support. I could talk with him about it. When I was so shocked and surprised by the intensity of the grief, I was talking to one of my friends, and that's what he said. Yeah, but you knew her your whole life practically.
Exactly.
And knew you, her, and on down the line. And that doesn't discount the wonderful relationship she had, with her husband.
Mm-hmm.
I was the trial that started it all out, and apparently she learned a lot because they were together the whole time. Anyway, so but I had that kind of support, and that's was talking. I also did a lot of writing. I journal as a spiritual writer.
Good writing and journaling, yes.
I dreamed about her, and so I write those dreams. I had the chance to, being part of the memorial service and being part of all of that was another.
Oh, you got to be a part of that. Okay,
powerful and so important because I was there with her family, with her husband, with her sister, and the nieces that I had not seen in many, many years. Some of the extended family. And we were all hugging each other and grieving her loss. And that was hugely healing for me on lots of levels. So,
sounds like you were being embraced by all of those that were present in her life, that you were truly embraced, including her husband at the time. It sounds like he was just a fantastic person, a fantastic life partner, even if it wasn't in marriage, but a fantastic life partner.
Right.
And I was going to say, I see that Wayne has said "Mind of Christ" here as we're going along, "Mind of Christ." And I wanted to Wayne has a statement here where he says, "I am boring. Entertain me," is what he's saying. And Wayne, I would just love it. Yes. And I want Wayne to remember that whatever comes after "I am" is what you become.
That's right.
So why don't I would invite you to say, "I am entertaining." How's that? Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. I'm glad that you could be here with us.
Right.
And you talked about writing and journaling and getting spiritual guidance. Those are definitely steps that are wonderful. Not wonderful. I don't want to use it that way. They are tools that allow you to really unearth what's inside. And I always feel that if it came up, it came to pass. And if we suppress it, what you resist will persist, and that grieving will not happen.
Right.
And also for our listeners to understand too, when I talk about grieving and allow it to come up, I do want to assure people, I know it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful, but know that will not last forever. You won't be pulled under. You won't drown. Not that. You will just feel like, wow. Maybe someone, I was doing some grief training with some practitioners in the Ukraine. And one of them, during our exercise, the exercise that I was leading them through, just left her in tears, and she just cried and cried. The next day, I got a letter from her that had been translated from Russian to English. And she was saying, after our program ended yesterday, I cried all night. I wrote a little bit. She said, but when I woke up this morning, there was this lightness in her heart that she had not felt for a long time. And that she had some insight in what her next steps would be. So that energy of grieving, allowing it to just come, be with it. Be
Absolutely.
with it. Yeah, and know that it will be. Yes, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. I'm just agreeing with you. Years ago, and I don't know where I first heard it, and it's a little bit cliche, but the phrase that tears are the safety valve on the heart.
Oh.
And I think I didn't say that in my discussion because I typically cry by myself, although I didn't this whole time. But I did a lot of crying lately, and it's interesting because I cry whenever I'm feeling and thinking about her or other losses I've had, but then the surprises are the sappy commercials, TV commercials, where somebody's doing something sweet and lovely and supportive and caring for another person, and all these things that you see, which have nothing much to do with any of this except it'll trigger it, and all of a sudden I'm sitting crying in the commercial because of some sweetness that happened in the
commercial
between people. And again, I find it humorous right now, but when I'm in it, it's not humorous. I feel
it's not humorous, right?
The other thing I want to say about grief that to me is so vital to be aware of is that grief is the grief, the pain, the crying, the anger, the disappointments, the bargaining, the trying to do things. All of that is a natural process that we have built in and hardwired into us, so that we can live through and rise above these kinds of experiences and recognize that Christ consciousness within us, or recognize basically we're going to be okay. And we're going to be sad. We're going to be sad, and we maybe have certain sadness about this forever. My daughter left home a long time ago. I'd go to the grocery store and pull something off the shelf that I needed to buy for her. And she wouldn't be there, and I'd get to the check. Oh my God! And burst into tears several times. I left home, bit of food right there to leave, because I had to leave. But if by allowing that to happen, I haven't cried over her food, by the way, in a long time. But
the days are over.
It gets better. I don't, it's not fresh in my everydaynness. It's just part of what has happened as part of my life journey.
Yes.
Her life journey, and the same is true for Kay. She had an amazing life, and
I was
thrilled,
Yes, I was going to say that intensity of grief does lessen initially. Yes, and Bob, you're right in the throes of that. Oh, that tender raw spot where everything is just a tender moment. And just want to invite you to really, practice self-care, loving yourself. Grief is exhausting. Grief is exhausting.
Yes.
You need rest, and I always say you can even take a break. You can say today is not the day. I'm taking a break, and then tomorrow.
Right.
And what you could do is set a timer every day that you're going to grieve for 15 minutes. I'm just going to grieve. I'm going to allow whatever comes to come. After that, okay, I'm going on. But grief is truly exhausting.
It is.
And I want to say one thing that I find to be very helpful and healing, and maybe you could try it, is a ritual. When we have ritual, funeral is like a big ritual. A funeral is a ritual.
Oh, it's really important.
Yes. And you can do your own ritual. And a ritual doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can be lighting a candle, ringing a bell, reading some inspirational quote, have the picture there, a flower there. It does not have to be elaborate, but it is a sacred time that you have set aside to say, yes, this person mattered in my life. Doesn't have to be that you even love them now. It's just They mattered at that point in my life.
One of the things I do when I'm doing memorial services for other people is at the end, I invite folks to sit down and or of course they are sitting, but to really take in and imagine and remember the person the very best, at their very best, especially if there's been a long illness or something. But and I did this individually in my own spiritual practice with Kay, of just getting as clear an image as I can of her. Yeah. And
yes.
And then releasing it. Imagining, for me, it's imagining the light of God itself just completely filling and surrounding her, and her being lifted out in a way from me into that. So I'm releasing her in a way. And that's so much of what the funeral is about, is making the death real, because it's shocking and makes the mind. And that's a practice, a spiritual practice that is, I didn't do it, I haven't done it just once, because I have to say, all right, girl, you're hanging out around here too much. You need to go back where you're going. And so we sit and have a time with her, and I see what it is, why she's in my mind, and why this is showing up, and then release her once again to the light.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Bob, when you were just talking about visualizing her, I actually felt her presence. So just breathe that in. I want us both to just breathe in the presence of Kay in this moment.
Yes.
Yeah. Just breathe it in. And Wayne was just right on target. He said, guidance on demand, God. Can you put that? Yeah. Guidance on demand, God. Thank you, Wayne, for that. Thank you. Because we're definitely being guided. There's just one last thing I wanted to share on ritual. The day that I found out my ex had died, I was really shocked. Hadn't seen him in 25 years, but I was still just shocked or devastated. But I was going to something, it's called Cosmic Mass. You ever heard of that? I can't remember. What's his name? Fox.
I've been to it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I had his name till you said yes.
It's a
that whole
Fox.
thing. It's contagious.
Yes. I think it's Matthew Fox.
It is Matthew Fox. Fox. He did one last week at the Parliament. I wasn't. Oh my
goodness.
He did one every year there, or every time they meet. Yeah.
Well, it was my first one to go to, and the way it's done, it's beautiful. You start out in community with the spiral dance. It's very visually stimulating. And then they do something called the Via Positiva, where it's just beautiful. And then they do the Negativa, and you see all the destruction happening on the planet.
Right.
And then you tap into your own losses. And I'm telling you, Bob, everyone in that building, and we were at Grace Cathedral, I don't know how many hundreds of us, were sobbing, crying. And that's what Matthew was saying, that grief is contagious. Grief is an experience. I mean, the person beside me, a young man, was just sobbing like it was the end of the world. And that I sobbed, and then that's when all of that came up for my ex, all that we had been through. Now his transition, that it's over, there won't be a chance to call and say, can we make amends? But that for me was so therapeutic to just, not just cry, but to sob and wail. It just came up and out. Yeah. So that was, and then after everyone has sobbed and cried, and we come back together, and there's this community where you greet each person. You greet each person with a hug. Well, back then, I guess we're not hugging with COVID, but anyway, there's just embracing each other and coming back together like we've built a solid community. So that was one ritual that, talk about divine guidance, guidance on demand by God. I was sent there.
I love that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Bob, we're at time. I know we're at time.
How did that happen?
I don't know, what were we talking about? My guest today is Dr. Bob Deen from Midtown CSL in Atlanta, and his contact information is there. And I can say you can go to his website, and there's lots of YouTube videos to watch from past talks and services. And I so invite each viewer to do that. And I want to thank Wayne for all of his comments, and my dear darling friend Megan, who's right here in Chapala with me. And it's just beautiful. So I want to ask you, Reverend, I want to ask you, Bob, closing words, closing thoughts, anything that you'd like to share with us.
Just to underline what you said, you can find out about what we're doing in Atlanta. We're doing all of our services are broadcast. So whether we're in person, which is only once a month, or online like this, and we broadcast through the New Thought Radio Network. So you can find all of our materials are here through this channel.
Wow.
My closing words are, you're never alone. You may feel like it. And
thank you.
As you said, you may feel at times like you're going to drown, but sometimes that's how you float to the surface. It's letting yourself
Ooh, I love that. I love that.
Relax and then let it all out. Cry out the tears. It is a healing process. It's not something you're stuck with forever.
Exactly.
I'm very grateful to have had this time. Thank you for this.
Great. Well, I am grateful to be here with you. It just feels so comfortable to be able to talk with you like this. And I think when other people watch us talk so freely about something that can be very difficult, it encourages them to then talk to someone more freely. Yeah. And Wayne is giving us advice here to be the light. Be the light. Bob and I just met at a conference. I was going to just say that we were just at a conference. We met at a conference, and the title was Share the Light. Remember? And so be the light, share the light. And that's what we're doing here today with your Doula for Grief. So I so appreciate you. And I know that Kay is smiling down on us. Yes, go ahead.
One more thing real quick to say, and that is,
you've got 3 minutes.
Don't have anybody else to talk to about all of this, and you need to talk. You got my contact information, and you've got Bonnie's contact information. That's a part of our work, because it's you're not alone. Yes.
You are not alone. And don't do grief alone. That is a number one.
Right.
Don't do this alone. And thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I am just honored. I'm honored, and I don't know where this time has gone. I think the clock is incorrect. But anyway, and if you would like to make a donation, Joe, is there the banner you could put up for donation, so that we can continue to have meaningful conversation and dialogues on different programs. I can see Bob right now having his own personal program here on the Media Network. So it's ntmedia.org donate. And so do make a contribution so that we can continue to have just meaningful dialogue with beautiful people that are doing good work in the world. And with that, I just say thank you for watching today. And what I'd like to just offer you to do, I want you to just go to the mirror, look yourself in the eye, and say, what do I need today? What do I need today? And honor whatever need comes up. Honor that. You are so worthy. You're so worthy of having your needs met. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.
Yes.
Dr. Bob Deen with us. Ciao now. Besitos. Bye-bye. Ciao.